here are what's left of my banana trees. I started cutting them down because the freeze took them out hard. It was not just one day we had a week of freezing temperatures, 2 weeks of just cold temperatures, and these are tropical plants. We live in a subtropical area. They're not used to these crazy temperatures. And bananas require a lot of water, and they are primarily water. So when these plants that are full of water are subject to freezing temperatures, it just bursts every cell inside of them. It's insane. I started cutting them down. These are just the 2 larger plants and parts of the smaller plants. And it is a lot of debris. Now, bananas are not actually trees. They are an herbaceous plant. They are herbs, which means our animals could technically eat this. But some of them are brown already, and so they would be a little harder for the ducks to tear up. And our geese, while they would love them, they're not really eating right now because the hen has gone broody, so our gander isn't really eating much either. He's kind of picking at the greens in their run, but really he's just kind of watching over her and complaining profusely at anybody that has the audacity to come by. So here is the top part of this banana plant, and I don't know if you can see, but there are already a ton of insects. Like, here's some ants. And earlier, what made me go ahead and cut down the larger ones is there were a ton of gnats, which are terrible here. So, let's see. And so if you squeeze this, you can see all of that water just comes right on out. It's crazy full of water. That's just how banana plants are. So as you can imagine, something this full of water, what the freeze did to them. I mean, just bursting all of their cells. So I'm a little disappointed. Hey, Shadow! This is Shadow Floyd, our lovely house cat. He loves being outside and exploring, but he is definitely an inside cat when it comes to bedtime. He loves to get in here and cuddle with our oldest child. He's a sweet boy. And so I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I could feed it to the animals. I probably will compost it. I'd like to feed it to them and compost what they don't eat, because that seems to be the most efficient way to keep it from going to waste. But this is going to add a ton of potassium and everything else back to our garden beds. So here at the base, I'm just taking this knife, and it's not a very big knife. It's just a sharp knife. And I'm going to put it at the base of this and just cut right on through. It's really easy to cut through this. It cut through the smaller ones, no big deal. Or the larger ones, no big deal. And so the smaller one, of course. And look, here's another. Just the amount of water in these is just draining. It's insane. You can see where all the cell walls have just busted open and they're just mush. And that's not usually the case. Now, what you're seeing is actually the potential leaves that come out of here. The true stalk of this plant doesn't reveal until it's time for it to flower, which obviously is not going to do because they all died, which is disappointing, because if you saw my other video about how we grow trees in Southeast Texas, these were watered by the duck coop when the ducks were in where the geese are. And so it would all drain out, and these were over a year old. So that means that next spring, if they would have survived, they would have definitely produced bananas. Once they start flowering, it takes about 9 months. Oh man, look at these. That is intense, isn't it? So you can see the base won't go to waste. And these actually look like sugar ants, some of them. I saw a couple of fire ants on top. So it's not like I'm risking anything being out here. I'm actually out here barefoot, working barefoot. That's what I like to do. This is really well mulched. This is a play area. I'm not the least bit worried about it. If it tells you how easy this is, I'm holding the camera with one hand and cutting at the base of these with the other. This one's a bit thicker, but It just cuts right through. I mean, it's insane. Oh, man. So the great thing about bananas is that all of this, you can see all the small banana plants that were really well hidden and camouflaged by the older ones. The great thing about this is that, for one, underneath the ground, they don't seem that damaged. And that means that when it warms up, wow, look at all the trash that was hidden in here. This is a really thick grove, so I'm going to clean all of this trash up. You can tell that some of the kids or even animals are just the wind blowing trash into here, or they drop it down when they walk by, because this is a kids' play area. And yeah, it's a bit of a mess. So look at that. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 small banana plants right there, and here were our 2 really large ones. So here's kind of medium sized. This was our biggest one. You can see just how big the rings are. This one was our 2nd year plant. So that's what I was saying, it's going on the 2nd year and about to flower. If you don't know, banana plants don't generally, at least the kind we grow, don't generally produce in their 1st year. It takes a little bit of time. I'll make sure to include a couple of clips of the video where all of these bananas were growing in here. And this is going to be my personal reminder, just so you know. After a year of growing them and finally letting them fill in and just go wild this summer, I realized that that's really not the case, in my opinion. I found, for me anyways, that we're in such a hot, humid climate, and the water just evaporates so quick. So that I can show you what it looked like when they were all green and really beautiful and luscious. And I let them kind of grow tightly together. Now that means, the great thing about bananas is they're up against the concrete. They're not going to break open this concrete like, say, an apple tree or something with really sturdy roots would do. And they're going to stop about the concrete. They may make their way under the fence, but I'm sure the geese, like the ducks, will make quick work of them if that's the case. So we planted them in an area in front of this fence where they have a kind of webbed roots, and they'll be able to spread out, and it's not really going to invade in anything. I mean, this is the kids' play area, and these are my son's idea to plant banana plants. So if anything, we're all bummed not to get fruit after growing these for so long. We're just not in a position to really create protection, and the protection we could offer with plastic was not enough. So hopefully within the next couple of years we can actually really invest in a good structure, or even some really thick cloth to throw over these bananas and protect them from another freeze if one like this happens, which the last couple of years our weather has just been completely unpredictable. So I'm almost certain that some oddball weather is going to happen again here in Southeast Texas. Look at that. That is insane. That's a pure amount of liquid in here. So these plants took one heck of a hit, I can tell you that right now. Oh man, look at this. What is a little larva from some kind of fly or something already hanging out in there? So that's what I'm saying. That's when you know these are mush. A couple years ago when we got that 9-degree weather, I had some bananas out here, and that's what these came up from. Actually, we did plant a couple more. I think we only planted 3 to get all of these, and I tried cutting it at an angle, and of course, even at an angle, it filled with maggots and flies, so we had to completely cut it down before winter ended. So that was a learning process. But here's another one. I mean, it's amazing how much water in these plants, just kind of pretty intense. I'm actually kind of impressed, you know? Kind of wondering if these could be a water source, but I don't know if you want to drink water out of plants on a everyday basis that were affected by the freeze like this. But it smells sweet. It has a very sweet, like the water coming out of these plants has a very sweet, it smells like bananas, but almost sweeter. So it's really nice to kind of see. It's kind of cool. Makes the work more pleasant. So I'm tempted to kind of throw these over the pin in that coop, but there's so much mud in there, and this would actually probably soak up some of the mud, but I'm kind of torn, like, should I compost them? Should I throw them in the pin? It's hard for me to figure out, but I think I'm gonna throw them in the compost bin, the open one over here. This compost bin I started at some point during this year. I actually made a YouTube video. It's kind of a composting fence, and it goes all the way down, and in one bin I just keep cardboard, and I let it get wet by the rain. It starts breaking down. I use that to create garden paths, which you can kind of see back here, and I'll elaborate more on that later. But here is our compost bin, the open one, and you can see everything's actually breaking down really well. There's some stuff that was recently kind of thrown in on top, but that's just from my boys not knowing which composting area to put stuff in. But you can see even ants have moved in here to really start breaking it down. And so now I'm ready to kind of move it all out. Right in here, you can see it's pretty well broken down. There's still some rabbit poop in there, but everything's kind of starting to grow on it, which tells me it's probably about time to go ahead and use this in some kind of garden. I do not have a garden bed for it yet, but I am willing to make some, because this is going to be like gold. It really is. And this is our other compost that mostly has more woody material in it. You can see that also has some pine shavings and everything else, before I decided to take the pine shavings out of the coop and turn it into these pathways. Lay some cardboard down, take pine shaving pathways. And look, my boys composted part of their word search that they used. So they're very good at learning what is compostable and what's not. You can see kind of the flower pods from earlier this year, and our blackberry plant trailing along, and the grapevine, although dormant, trailing along too. That's a muscadine cross, fry muscadine and something else. And so here's kind of the cardboard bin. It's not sightly, but from the other side the plants cover it, so you can't see it. And all of this waste that could have ended up in the trash will be used, and other people that know us know to bring their cardboard here also, so we can use it and lay it down as the base of our garden beds and pathways, and kind of suppress the grass. Now, I wish we were in a better position to grow things right now and create new pathways, because all the grass is dead and wet and soggy because it's been raining and we had a freeze. So this would be a perfect time to kind of start suffocating it out in order to mulch pathways, which is kind of what happened there. This is where I put more woody material. This comes from our trees and things like that, and I'm just letting it do its own thing. This is just an empty bin. It's not really doing anything but holding some of my trellis. And so I'll end up filling these up, and this, not one, it will get used. And then if it's still like this, heavily wooded material, I'll probably fill it with soil on top of it, or compost, and plant inside of it some vining plants like cucumbers and things like that. That's kind of the plan. And then here I will take this out and put it into a bed, and then put some kind of soil or something on top of it, so it'll help feed all of those plants and continue to finish breaking down. But if this is what the top looks like, at the very bottom it looks amazing. And I'm almost nervous to stick my hand in here because, snakes, ants, all of that. But look at that. I mean, this is amazing. It's so beautiful and rich. I'm really impressed with this. So I'll actually probably add the bananas to this one. I'm just a little nervous because they do have some sooty mildew on them from, you know, the sudden change in temperature and freezing, and now it's back in the 70s again, so it's really crazy to go down to below freezing up to the 70s. I mean, we're in the low teens. It's weird, but hey, Shadow! He's gone. You can see even my seed starts, they kind of just died. I do have a couple of plants that survived right here. There they are. Those are my baby blackberries that I'm rooting, but the rest of them just died. I don't know why I didn't get to them in time for the freeze. It came a day sooner than I thought, and, well, poor plants. Shadow's funny because when we're outside, he loves staying right by me. See him climbing up the kids' playhouse that we built, but he doesn't want me to touch him, and he especially thinks it's weird when I have my phone filming. He doesn't understand what in the world I think I'm doing. He's very much the kid's cat. He's okay with me feeding him and holding him for a little bit inside, but really he just wants to play and kind of hang out with the boys, mostly my oldest, who's a bit more mature and calm than his younger brothers. Okay, so just throwing these bananas plants right on top of this to break down. If I had more pathways, I might mulch it in the pathways. The only downside is we have a serious fire ant problem, as you can see right here in my garden bed. And the last thing I want is to have a serious fire ant problem all around my feet, because that happens. And even over here on the other side of the garden, another giant pile of fire ants, which is getting worse because it's been rainy, so they just kind of move, and that's a mess. But they do, if you watch some of my other videos, you'll see them like farming squash, which I did put a short on YouTube yesterday about that I kidnapped off my own Instagram page. And they also farm the okra. I've seen them eat aphids off of things like my apple trees, and I really do need to kind of compile so you can see, making quick work of this. But look, all of these plants, it's insane. It really is. Just how much organic matter you get to compost just from these banana plants after the freeze. And if you have a large orchard that has this kind of damage, I mean, you could really make a large amount of compost just like that. And not to worry too much, because for one, I'm not even sure this grapevine is old enough to produce. This is our second year growing it, and it was already 2 to 3 years old when getting it, so it may be, but these are all the first year vines, because that's what grapes produce on, is the new vines. But depending on whether I see baby grapes or not, I'll cut these back to make the stalk stronger. If I don't see baby grapes, I'll cut them back. If I do, maybe I'll try and see how they do. But you can see kind of the base of it right in here. It's a few inches thick now. It's not some crazy massive vine because it's something that I planted myself here, and it's fairly young. But it is pretty cool to have something growing, you know, and produce fruit that you planted in the ground, tended to for a couple of years, knowing that it wasn't going to produce soon, that you were going to have to put a couple of years of work into it to get fruit off of, and then seeing it come into fruition and produce. I mean, I just can't tell you the type of, I don't know, joy, I guess, that it brings. The absolute elation. I'm excited to see that. Now, I can tell you right now, this was never meant to be our forever home. There was a time where we thought we would build a house on this property here in the city and probably live here forever. And at the time, we didn't have our daughter was not born yet. We did not know she was going to have white matter disease. And we had no idea that we'd end up homeschooling our children. That was not a plan. I wanted to work and go to school. And so life has kind of thrown us so many curveballs that I never expected to happen. I really didn't. And although I always liked the idea of having animals and everything, I never really thought that I would really get serious about urban homesteading the way that I have. I just remember really obsessing on YouTube about urban homestead, or about homesteading in general, and what I could do, and people saying, I wish I would have started where I was. I wish I would have started making airs when I was still in the city. And I was like, why not? Why not go ahead and try that? And then when our daughter got seriously ill, I just had a lot of anger, and I still do. I mean, I spend a lot of time frustrated because it's just hard to deal with. It's hard for me to comprehend, let alone watch her siblings and her go through what they're going through. It's rough. And so I just needed an out before I just lost it on somebody, because there are times where people try to be kind and they say things, and it's really hard not to lose your temper when you're going through something quite intense. So gardening's kind of my out. Making these videos just gives me something to focus on that's positive and have something good come out of all the destruction. Kind of like these banana plants. Look how much this filled up. I mean, this is a 4-foot by 4-foot frame. It's one of those IBC containers that hold water you see in a lot of permaculture settings, especially urban permaculture settings. So these are the frames to them. And I actually took the plastic parts out and gave them to my aunt, and she'll be cutting them in half to make garden beds. And I'm really excited to see how those come along. I can't wait to see it. She's done some really cool things out on her property as far as container gardening's going, especially during the freeze. So that's going to be a really cool thing to kind of see. So, alright, this is it. So all the banana plants are kind of in here where they can begin to break down, and this is going to make some amazing soil, but I can't believe how much it filled up. That's pretty impressive for a small grove of bananas. So if you have a large grove, like I said, you could do some pretty incredible things with it. And also, if this doesn't break down quick enough, I can add more to it and even some soil on top of it and just plant in it, which is a really cool option. Get some cucumbers or other vining things. Do have my eye on some African horn melons that I have. But this is a kids' play area, and although they're getting older and not really interested in coming and climbing on the play space as much, it would be a shame for them to grab a handful of stickers. So maybe some cucumbers or more berry plants or watermelons or something cool that can kind of trail out of this and along this open ground right here, because it is a huge it's larger than the area we have for the ducks back there. So I know it's well over 1,000 square feet. It's really great. I'll have to actually measure it out one time. But I mean, for just this section, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and there's 10 feet that way and probably 8 feet in the other direction minimum, probably a lot more. So just in width, it's huge.